The last time we talked, we learned about what a habitat was. And Rattenborough, the explorer rat, he helped us. And he taught us about the difference between living things and non-living things. And then he also talked about how he was going to take us all over the globe to learn about different habitats in the animals and plants that live there. Today, we're going to learn about the animals of the Arctic habitat. Before we can jump right into that, I want us to review what we've already learned. So, what were those 3 things that a habitat had to have in order for living things to be able to survive or live in it? I want you to pause this video and go tell somebody in your house what those 3 things were. Go. All right. Those 3 things were food, water, and shelter. Shelter was like a location, and it was going to protect you from weather and danger. I want you, thinking about those 3 things that you need in a habitat, food, water, and shelter, to tell me or tell somebody in your house what Rattenborough, the explorer rat, what his habitat looked like. Go. All right, guys. So, where did Rattenborough, what was his shelter? That's right, under the steps in an alley. What about his food? Where did he get his food from? That's right, he got it from the trash cans, and he got it from the litter that humans leave. Okay, well, what about his water? Where did he get his water from? Exactly, he gets his water from drains and pipes and puddles that happen from the rain. Now, I want you to tell somebody at your home about your habitat. Where do you get your water from? Where do you get your food from? What is your shelter? Go. All right, guys, now that we have reviewed, it's time for us to learn a little about where we are. Today, we're learning about a place called the Arctic, okay? So, the Arctic is a region around the North Pole. When we were learning about geology and we learned about geology, and when we learned about astronomy, we talked a little bit about the North Pole and the South Pole. So the North Pole is over here above this yellow line, and the land, those are called the Arctic tundra, and all of this water is called the Arctic Ocean. Okay, today you're going to learn about the plants and animals that live in the Arctic region, both on the land and in the water. And Rattenborough is going to help us learn. So, I want you to listen carefully to find out which plants and animals live in the Arctic tundra and how in the Arctic Ocean and how they survive. What do you guys see in this image? Yes, we see Rattenborough, the explorer rat. We see some ice and snow, maybe some icebergs. Let's see what Rattenborough has to say. Hello again, Rattenborough the adventurer, here to take you on a tour of one of the coldest habitats on Earth, the Arctic tundra. In the tundra, there aren't very many plants. In fact, there are no trees at all. And a rat like me has to wear long johns and mittens. Guys, long johns are a warm layer of clothing that you're going to wear underneath your regular clothes so that you can stay warm. The winter here is incredibly strong, the wind here is incredibly strong, which makes the air feel even colder. The ground is frozen and nearly everything is covered in ice. In the winter, daylight only lasts a few hours, and at times the sun doesn't even come out at all. Some ice will still be here in the summer, but in the summer, the top layer of ice melts so that the ground gets all wet and muddy. The temperatures here are so low that most people and animals would freeze. All these things make the Arctic tundra one of the least friendly habitats on Earth for plants and animals. Some plants and animals can only live in the Arctic tundra in the summer months when the temperature is warmer, but some are able to live there all year long. Arctic plants grow very close together, and they don't grow very tall, which keeps them from being blown away by the Arctic winds. The kinds of plants that can live in the Arctic tundra are mosses and different types of grass. For once, I'm one of the tallest things around. The animals that call the Arctic tundra habitat home all year long have adapted to the harsh conditions. When an animal has adapted to a habitat, that means that it has changed over the years and now has special things that help it live in a habitat. For example, many animals in the Arctic have adapted by growing heavy fur coats that help them stay warm in the cold temperatures. This creature is called a musk ox. The musk ox's long, shaggy coat has an extra layer of hair underneath that keeps him warm when the temperature is cold enough to turn a rat into a popsicle, and it sheds its extra coat of hair in the warmer summer months. So guys, what do you do to adapt when the weather is cold outside? What do you guys do to not freeze and become a popsicle? Exactly. You wear lots of layers. You're going to probably wear a long sleeve shirt, maybe a sweatshirt on top of that, and then a big puffy coat. You're going to layer up so that you're warm. The muskox, he's got different layers of fur, just like you guys are putting on different layers of clothing. And when it's summer, we don't wear all of those layers, right? Just like the muskox, Rattenborough said that some of his fur starts to shed and he doesn't keep all of those layers. Musk oxen travel in herds so they can huddle together for added warmth. Guys, the word musk oxen is the plural for musk ox. One musk ox, but many musk oxen. Whew, that's hard to say. Their hooves, which are the hard coverings on some animals' feet, are very wide to keep them from slipping on the snow and ice. In the winter, musk oxen use their sharp hooves to dig under the snow to find plants to eat. That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. Here comes an animal that I want to stay hidden from. This is a wolverine. Do you guys have any idea why Rattenborough might want to stay hidden from the wolverine? Yeah, wolverines eat small animals, including rats. So hopefully Rattenborough stays clear of the wolverine. The wolverine uses its fur coat to keep nice and warm. Like the muskox, the wolverine has large paws to help it move across the snow and that come in handy when it's trying to catch food. These animals are called caribou and are part of the deer family. They are sometimes called reindeer. These caribou are traveling in a huge herd, which helps to protect them against attack by other animals. Caribou hair traps air, which helps these animals stay warm. Their hooves change depending on the time of the year, so they can walk and run on mushy, wet terrain or on hard, icy terrain. Caribou also have antlers to help them dig for grass in the snow. Wow, guys, I didn't know a lot about that. I didn't know that their hooves changed, and I definitely didn't know that they use their antlers to dig. Wow. What do you guys see in this picture? Kind of looks like a fox, doesn't it? Let's see what Rattenborough has to say about it. This Arctic fox also has a coat that changes during the winter from a brown summer coat into this very thick white fur that helps the fox blend into its surroundings. The fur also covers its feet so it can walk on snow and ice. Thanks to the fox's fur, it can hide and sneak up on birds and hare and rodents like me. So guys, isn't that so cool that its hair, the hair on the fox, is going to change color in this different season? So when it's snowy, when it's cold, the fox is going to be white. So it's going to be hard to see him in the snow. And then in the summer, his coat turns brown so that you can't really see him in the brown grass. The Arctic hare's white coat becomes much heavier in the winter. Its ears are smaller than those of other hares, meaning less of its body is exposed to the cold. Hey guys, when something is exposed, it's not protected and it's out in the open without anything covering it, okay? So in the Arctic, any part of your body that is exposed, it would get really cold really fast. So that's why they have shorter ears than the bunnies that you might see around here. In other words, this is no place for critters with long dangly ears, unless they have long dangly earmuffs to keep those ears from freezing. The hare's white coloring also helps it hide in the snow, and its back feet are wide and large, like small snowshoes, so it can run fast in the snow. There are other kinds of habitats in the Arctic besides the tundra, and different kinds of plants and animals live in those other habitats. The Arctic Ocean is a habitat rich in sea life and animals that rely on the sea for their food. The water is so cold in the Arctic Ocean that most living creatures would be able to stay alive only for a few minutes in it. Oh, I'm getting cold. Animals such as the walrus call the Arctic Ocean home. These huge creatures just love the icy water and can swim around for a long period of time. Walruses have adapted to life in the Arctic Ocean by storing blubber under their skin. Blubber is a layer of fat that some animals have under their skin to keep them warm. Blubber prevents heat from escaping from their bodies. Walruses also have long teeth called tusks, which they use almost like arms to pull themselves up out of the water onto the ice. Do you see their tusks? That's crazy that those tusks are strong enough to pull that ginormous blubbery walrus out of the ocean, isn't it? Must be real strong. Look at these cute animals. They are seals. Seals have blubber under their skin just like walruses. Some types of seals are born covered with a layer of white fur to keep them warm until they develop blubber. Seals are incredible swimmers. Like fish and walruses, seals don't have arms and legs. Instead, seals have flippers, and they swim by wiggling their bodies from side to side, using their flippers to steer. They swim very fast so they can catch plenty of tasty fish. Thankfully, they don't eat rats. Here comes a polar bear. Look out! Let's hide behind this rock and I'll tell you some things about this amazing creature. The polar bear is perhaps the best known of all the animals living around the Arctic Ocean. These astonishing animals have adapted incredibly well to the harsh Arctic habitat. Polar bears are the largest bears in the world. Male polar bears weigh up to 1,700 pounds. That's probably heavier than everyone in your class put together, including your teacher. And polar bears grow up to be about 10 feet from head to toe. Yikes! Polar bears are covered with a heavy coat made up of 2 layers of fur, and they have a layer of blubber under their skin. Their ears and tails are very small, so that not too much of their bodies are exposed to the cold weather. Hey guys, what does exposed mean? Do you remember? Exposed means out, right? If it's exposed, like those bunnies' ears, they're not getting the protection, and they're not they're not directly attached to the rest of their body to get the warmth. It's a good thing that they have all that fur and blubber and sharp claws, because polar bears spend most of their life living on sea ice or chunks of ice that float in the Arctic Ocean. Sometimes polar bears take a dip in the icy Arctic water to swim from one chunk of ice to another, and they have webbed paws, sort of like a duck's feet, to help them swim. They use those mighty paws to hunt their favorite food, seals. Like all living things, polar bears need water to survive, and they get that water from the melted snow and ice. Even though adult polar bears spend most of their time living on sea ice, polar bear babies, or cubs, are born on land. Their mothers, female polar bears, burrow in the snow to make a den. That means that they're going to dig a hole into the snow to make a shelter. They will then hide in the den while they are having their babies. They stay in the dens with their young all winter, and in the spring they finally come out. The cubs stay with their mothers for almost 2 years to learn hunting and survival skills before leaving home. Now, speaking of home, I really must go. It's absolutely frigid. Frigid means very, very cold. And my whisker warmers just aren't doing the job. We've learned a lot about the Arctic habitat and the animals that have managed to adapt to survive here. I think our next stop should be somewhere warmer, don't you? Remember that even habitats as extremely cold as the Arctic tundra and Arctic Ocean can be full of life. Now, it's not easy for me to stay hidden in all this snow, and I can barely move with all these clothes on, so I'm getting out of here before I get spotted by that Arctic fox. See you next time! Wow, we learned a lot about the Arctic animals and how they live and adapted in their habitat. So, I want you to take a minute to describe the Arctic tundra habitat. Go. The Arctic tundra is very cold and windy. The ground is frozen and covered with ice during the winter when there is very little sunlight. Okay, so in the winter, they don't get very much sun. And if they do have sun, it's only for a short amount of time. In the summer, the top layer of ice is going to melt and the ground's going to get all wet and muddy. And it has no trees at all. There are no trees in the tundra. So, what about the Arctic Ocean? It's very cold water, and it's too cold for many living creatures to live in there for very long, right? And it's also, the ocean is covered with a lot of ice. What kind of plants live in the Arctic tundra? Do you remember? Yes, mosses and grasses. So, how have these plants adapted or changed to live in the Arctic tundra? Yeah, they grow close together and they grow really low to the ground. So they're not going to be very tall, so they're not super exposed. How have walruses, seals, and polar bears adapted to keep warm? How can they stay warm? Yes, they have fur coats and they have a layer of blubber beneath their skin. Exactly. How have walruses adapted so that they can move from the water of the Arctic Ocean onto the ice and near the Arctic Ocean? Do you remember? I was talking about it, and they all have 2 of them. Yes, they have long tusks that they're going to use to pull themselves out of the water and onto the ice. How do polar bears adapt to live near the Arctic Ocean? They also have a layer of blubber, and then they have 2 layers of fur. They have small ears and a small tail, and then they have those sharp claws to help them hunt, and they've got webbed paws that are going to help them swim. So, why is it important for living creatures to adapt to the environment in which they live? So, why would it be important that these animals are able to change with the place that they live in? Exactly. They need to adapt so that they can survive in the climate. So hot, cold, rainy, dry. And they need to be able to find food and water and shelter that is good for them. Because remember, I'm going to need something different. I'm going to need a different habitat than a snow hare. Okay? So, do you think that the Arctic is a good habitat for a polar bear? Yes. Why? Exactly, because the polar bear can find food, like seals, it can find water through melted snow and ice, and it can find shelter, the dens that it digs. All right, so today in the Read Aloud, you heard a lot of big words, and one of those words was adapted, and the first time that we heard it, the sentence said, the animals that call the Arctic tundra habitat home all year round have adapted to the harsh conditions. I want everybody to say the word adapted. You can whisper it, you can monster voice it, you can say it in a deep voice, you can say it in a mouse voice. Go. Adapted! That's how I wanted to say mine. Adapted means changed over time to be better prepared or better able to do something, okay? So adapted means they're changing so that they can live somewhere, okay? I'm going to use it in a sentence. The animals in the harsh Arctic habitat have adapted to very cold weather. So they've changed so that they can live in the very cold weather. You heard about some types of animals that have developed different ways to adapt to their Arctic habitat. What people have you learned about who needed to adapt in order to survive? Exactly. We talked about the Egyptians. They had to adapt to the flooding Nile each spring by building their homes above the river level. I want you to think about the Aztec and the canals that they created in swampy lands. And I want you to think about the growing gardens in the desert. I want you to try to use the word adapted when you tell somebody in your house about it. You could say something like, blank adapted to blank by blank. Go ahead. All right. What is the word we've been talking about? That's right. It's adapted. I'm going to show you pictures of a few animals that we learned, and I want you to tell me how each of these animals adapted to the Arctic habitat. Make sure you use the word adapted in your answer. This is the Arctic hare. How did the Arctic hare adapt to the Arctic? Go. Exactly. It has white fur, so it blends in with the snow. Its fur is going to get thicker in the winter. Its ears are smaller. Its back feet are wide and large, which help it run fast in the snow. What about the caribou? These were probably my favorite to learn about. That's right. The caribou adapted by traveling in large herds to keep warm. They have thick hair that traps air, allowing them to stay warm. And they have hooves that change along with the changing land. I mean, that's just crazy to me. And they have the antlers that help them dig for grass in the snow. So they adapt in all sorts of ways. Last one. The Arctic fox. How does the Arctic fox adapt to the Arctic? Exactly. It has a coat that changes to white during the winter, so it blends in with the snow, and it has fur on its feet so that it can walk on the snow and the ice. Guys, I'm so glad that we got to talk about the animals of the Arctic. I think they are really cool, but I don't know. I don't think that the Arctic is for me. As much as I love snow, I think that would be too cold. What do you think? All right. Look on your Google Classroom to find out what assignments you're going to do with this read aloud, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.